just a great program ahead for us tonight. I just wanted to let you know about our next program, which sadly will be the last program of the year, I believe. But we're going to end up with a superb program. You see it on the screen, May 25th, 7 p.m., 3 weeks from tonight, because of the Jewish holiday interrupting the normal 2-week period. The title is Jewish Heritage and Contemporary Challenges, and the speakers are exceptional: the Honorable Erwin Kotler, the Honorable Linda Fromm, and Michael Levitt. And please sign up. We already have over 100 registrants who've signed up. You can see the website to register. And just to tell you about the sponsors and the partners for tonight's program. Sponsors are Beth Shalom Synagogue, UGA Federation of Greater Toronto. The partners are Beth Emet Beis Yehuda Synagogue, Beth Radon Congregation, Beth Tikva Synagogue, Beth Torah Congregation, Beth Tzedek Congregation, Pride of Israel Synagogue, Sinai Temple, Los Angeles, Stand With Us Canada. And I want to pause here for a moment before I get to the next slide and just say Bruchim Habayim, welcome to the synagogue members who've joining our program from Los Angeles. We embrace you. You're part of our community. I send you a virtual hug as the moderator of this program, and we're just thrilled to join with the Sinai Temple for this program and to have one of your rabbis with us as a guest. So now the next screen, which will be a mystery to some. Why is the title Pharaoh and the Clever Assassin with my name on the screen? The reason is that tomorrow is the release of my debut novel, historical fiction, a legal thriller. My background is as a criminal defense lawyer, and you can pre-order the book. The website's there. You can actually read the introduction, see some testimonials. I'm very excited about it. And also I'm having a book launch, and if you go to the chat box, you're able to get a link. You're all welcome to my book launch, which I promise will be fun and interesting. And we'll see you there hopefully tomorrow. All right. So let me introduce, we have a very different kind of program tonight. It's very unconventional. We like to zag when everyone else zigs, and we're certainly doing that tonight. And we have Rabbi Erez Sherman from the Sinai Temple and Mike Sweetney. I want to welcome both of you to Evenings with Steve. And I want to start with you, Rabbi, because you've done something extraordinary. You combined faith and sports, and you combined them into a podcast that you're running. So could you tell us, first of all, how you see sports and faith coming together, and then also let us know something about your podcast?
Great. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Steve, for inviting me and my good friend Mike Sweetney from coast to coast, actually. So I'm not from LA, I just pretend to be here. I'm actually from Syracuse, New York, originally, where my dad was a conservative rabbi for 40 years. He's now retired in Philadelphia. He might be on here. And so growing up in Syracuse, New York, sports is a type of religion with our basketball and our football program there, with no professional sports. We did, by the way, have the AAA for the Blue Jays. So many of your guys who won the series, Carlos Delgado, Sean Green, Alex Gonzalez, I used to watch them before they got to the big leagues. But sports was all, my dad actually played basketball at Yeshiva University. So sports was part of my blood, if you wish. And then faith, of course, was as well. So my mom used to say, no shul, no pool. If you didn't come to shul, then you wouldn't come swimming after. And the same thing, if my friends came to shul, we would go walk the couple miles to the Carrier Dome and catch the afternoon game, basketball or football. And if you're from Syracuse, by the way, you grew up disliking the Georgetown Hoyas, which in this moment, Mike being a Georgetown Hoya, is a moment of geula and redemption that the two of us now travel around speaking about sports and faith. But that sports story followed me to Los Angeles when I got here to Sinai Temple. Sinai for the last 7 years. We are blessed to have 3 gymnasiums, and in the summer they were empty. And I realized that all the kids were playing in their local basketball camps. And I realized that through the relationships of the sports world that I had over the many years that I would play, And during rabbinical school, by the way, I worked at Syracuse's Jim Boeheim's basketball camp as a referee for a couple extra dollars during the summer. I opened up a basketball camp, and we called it High Level Basketball, High Level Jewish Values. And each day we would bring in a speaker, and each day, besides the high level basketball instruction that the kids were getting, they would also get either a Jewish speaker or a basketball speaker. They would get a social action project. We would do special needs clinics. Friday before we left, we would have a bake challah. And instead of an awards ceremony at the end of the week, they would come to our driveway. Mike was at one of those. And we had a Shabbat dinner in our driveway with the guest speaker. And it was fascinating because here I was competing with the other local regular basketball camps. UCLA is down the street. They're playing in their amazing stadium, Pauley Pavilion. And we were selling out our camp week after week. And it made me realize that we have to meet not just kids, but families where they were. And somebody asked me when I started this 5 years ago, like, why you're a rabbi, why are you wearing shorts and t-shirt during the summer? And I said, I can do more sacred work on the court with our kids and meeting those parents than I can just sitting in an office and waiting for the phone to ring to have a faith discussion with somebody. And that led actually to, during the pandemic, we of course didn't have camp last year, but I realized that I had all these wonderful contacts, and if we had conversations with them, we could talk about faith and sports. And I began connecting with person after person, and it's been like every person has led to another person, and it's been a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so faith in sports, that's the premise of the podcast. Is there faith in the sports world? And every single person, no matter if they're observance or not, and I spoke with Jews and not Jews, white and black, young and old, basketball, football, baseball, gymnastics, broadcasters, owners, athletes, everybody, they all say yes. And I don't ask them about who scored this and when the Raptors won that. I ask them of their deeper story. What is the faith behind what they do in the sports world? And these are stories that aren't shared. And so, you know, I'll do a podcast with an athlete or a broadcaster, and 3 days later, I'll see them do a national game. And they're not talking about what we spoke about. But everybody who heard and saw realized that there's a much deeper story than what they're just doing in that moment. So that's how Rabbi on the Sidelines came to be.
Yeah, and I've watched a number of your podcasts. We're going to come back to discuss them, but I want to come to Mike. Welcome, Mike, to the program. We're really thrilled to have you. And you know, I have to start with 2003 because you were drafted by the New York Knicks that year. You were the ninth. You know, we're talking about the 400 and some best basketball players in the world. And you were drafted in the first round, ninth overall. But that year had specific significance because it was the year that LeBron James was drafted, Dwayne Wayne was drafted, and most significantly for the people from Toronto watching, Chris Bosh was drafted. I think he was drafted a couple of spots ahead of you, Mike. And so you became, you know, a member of the New York Knicks, one of the, you know, playing in Madison Square Gardens, which is viewed as one of the great sports arenas in the world, one of the great franchises in the National Basketball Association. And so just speak to your visits to Toronto. What was it like visiting our city and playing against Raptors? I have to get your insight on that.
No, I mean, it was amazing. I think it was amazing because I think for me, when I first came into the league, you know, I always thought that Miami and Los Angeles was like the amazing places to go. So when in my rookie year, when they said, hey, we're getting ready to head to Toronto for a game, all the guys were excited. I'm like, what's so, you know, exciting about Toronto? I never knew nothing about Toronto a day in my life. And then when I got there, it was like one of the most beautiful places you ever want to visit. You know, just the people, you got all different walks of life there. Everybody was just so nice. The food was amazing. Just the atmosphere was just amazing. So then when we get to the arena to play the game, and I mean, obviously, you know, the Garden is the Mecca, but the way those fans were so passionate for the Raptors, I don't think no other team has that much passion as far as fans with that. Their whole, you know, the whole arena is sold out, and every single person in there is just like screaming to the top of their lungs. Then you got people outside. I mean, the atmosphere was amazing. I was like, wow, what is this? I mean, you didn't really know about it. I mean, obviously now, you know, because of the championship run and the Chris Bosh, they started to get some recognition. But I mean, it was amazing, just the atmosphere there. And I was like, wow, that's why you guys are excited about visiting Toronto. So just that became one of my most famous places to visit when I was playing in the league. I always look forward to going to Toronto. And luckily, by me playing on the East Coast team, we came twice a year. So I was excited about that.
All right. So Mike, you played for the Knicks a couple of years, and then you played for some other teams, as I recall, and then you left professional basketball. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
And you've been very open about what happened to your career and your personal life, because I want you to know something. I view people's privacy as so important, but you've decided to be open and very courageous about talking about it. So I want our audience to know that I wouldn't dare broach the subject otherwise. And so we're going to watch a newscast that talks about where your life and career went after you stayed with the New York Knicks. And I'm going to ask you some questions about that. Okay?
The world is still reeling from the death of Kobe Bryant, and certainly basketball fans are. So we thought we could use an uplifting story about basketball, and Bruce Beck has one for us tonight. It is about Michael Sweetney, a former Knicks lottery pick who's seen the lowest of the lows.
But now he is molding young athletes in New York City. News 4's Bruce Beck sat down with Sweetney and is here with his just an inspirational story, Bruce.
What a turnaround, guys. Michael Sweetney was once a coveted member of the New York Knicks. Now he's coaching at a Jewish university in Washington Heights. In between, there were many years of darkness. His comeback is truly remarkable.
Sweetney against Mim. Goes up and under. Nice ball from Sweetney.
He was a Knick for 2 seasons, a celebrated first-round pick in 2003 out of Georgetown. But Michael Sweetney's career quickly went downhill.
I was in the NBA, the highest, in the New York Knicks, the highest point of my life, and I wasn't happy. I was going through depression.
His depression was triggered by the death of his father shortly before the start of his NBA career. Sweetney was out of the league before the age of 25, and his weight ballooned to 370 pounds.
Did you ever contemplate taking your own life?
Yes, I contemplated and I tried it once, and obviously I wasn't successful at it, but I tried to take pills one day because I just had enough, and I just...
After hitting rock bottom, it was love and responsibility that pulled Sweetney out of the abyss.
So I got out of the darkness by when my wife informed me that she was pregnant with my son. I knew that I had to make a change. So I started to, to get the right help, the right counseling, and just try to take care of myself so I can just be right for him.
Now a healthy Mike Sweetney has found a second career as a coach. He's an assistant at Division III Yeshiva University, a far cry from the glitz and glamour of the NBA.
So there's one dribble, it's taking you here, step.
We pride ourselves on kind of having a diversity within the framework of the Jewish religion here, and here we're kind of adding an outside diversity to our locker room, and the experience and what he brings in and the lessons that he's able to teach our guys from a different background is huge for them down the road.
Sweetney found a home in the Jewish basketball community thanks to his longtime friendship with Tamir Goodman, a.k.a. the Jewish Jordan, who recommended Mike for the job at Yeshiva.
Jab, one dribble, two, come back, shot.
Sweetney and Yeshiva are winning, too. The Division III Maccabees are ranked in the top 25 for the first time in school history. Meanwhile, his home life is ranked number 1. Mike and his wife, India, are blessed with 3 beautiful children.
Me being where I am in life now, I'm more happier now than I was in the NBA, being an NBA player. People are like, what? You crazy? I'm like, no, I'm not. For me, just, working with youth, working with students, working with everyone, just sharing my story and trying to inspire others. It brings me so much joy to do that and coach basketball.
Mike is also the head coach of the girls' varsity team at the Ramaz School on the Upper East Side. He's a mental health advocate, speaking at schools, conferences, just about anywhere. He's passionate about helping others, and he's loving the game of basketball once again.
Wow. And you can really see the passion, and he's helping them with so much more than just basketball.
Yes, and it's not about being knocked down. It's about how you rise when you fall, and he feels strongly about that.
And so important he's talking about it, particularly as men, as a man of color. They don't talk about mental health. They don't talk about depression. So
he's a mental health advocate.
Right where he's supposed to be.
Yes.
All right. Great story, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Hi, everyone. Steve will be back with us in just a moment. I think he may have just lost connection.
Got it. Can I say a word then as he's coming back?
Absolutely. Please feel most welcome to, Rabbi.
Sounds good. Mike, can you mute Mike too? That's possible. So that video is telling, and you saw Tamir Goodman. We can maybe just talk how I saw an article after Mike went to Israel. And what year was that?
What's this? 19, right?
Yeah. And there was an article how Mike went to Israel, had his connection with Tamir, and I sent him an email saying, you don't know me, but I like what you're doing. Can you come to LA? And he said, I can't right now. I got to go to Camp Ramah. I said, are you crazy? What are you doing there? And then he came out here, and we became just wonderful friends and partners. Maybe you can talk about your connection with Tamir Goodman, the Jewish Jordan.
For sure. Oh, everybody's still here.
Yeah, everybody's here besides Steve. He's coming back.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So obviously you saw the video of Tamir. I mean, I'm sure I don't know if people know him, but he was considered the Jewish Jordan in high school. And for me, and I get he had an amazing basketball career. He was one of the first people, I guess, Orthodox people that had, I guess, a Division I, offer for school. And for him, which is so amazing to me, I respect it, especially me being older and mature, and how he chose his faith over sports at that point. There's a point where he had an offer scholarship to Division I Maryland University, and they wouldn't accept him missing games and practice on the Sabbath, and he chose his faith over there. And I respect it so much. So we kind of became friends. We met in high school, and we've been friends for like 21 years now. 21 years we developed a friendship, and from there we kind of just stayed in contact. And I think during my darkest times, he kind of didn't know what I was going through, because I didn't really talk about it much, but he would always just text me, check in on me. And we just had a really, really close bond. We both ended up losing, obviously we both lost our fathers. So we kind of had a connection there. And then once I kind of made the announcement that I was going through depression, and it kind of became viral, he reached out, and he said, well, I had no clue. And we just, kind of developed an even stronger bond. And next thing you know, he ended up he was living in Cleveland at the time. He moved to Israel. And he said, hey, can you run a camp for me called Camp Ramah Poconos? Because that's like my baby. It's my pride and joy. I only trust you with it. And he's an overnight camp. And I'm gonna be honest with you. So Tamir was the only Jewish person I grew up in an urban community. I was mainly African-American. So when he told me to go to a Jewish, camp, and I was just kind of scared. I was like, hey, look, I don't want to, for me, it wasn't more so, I was more so wondering, I don't want to disrespect anybody. I didn't want to do anything wrong to offend anybody. So I was more so nervous on getting it right. And when I got there, me, my wife, and my kids, it was like one of the most amazing times of my life. Everybody welcomed me with open arms. My kids cried when they left there. It was just it was a great experience. And so that's how we met, and that's how we kind of, that's how I kind of pretty much doing stuff into the community. And
so explain that Shabbat experience at Camp Ramah that you told me about as you walked into the Hadar Ochel, the cafeteria, basically.
Know what Shabbat was. I mean, I knew about the Sabbath, I knew about the shutdown and everything like that, but I didn't know about the dinner. So they say, hey, come to Shabbat dinner Friday night. All right, cool. So at that time we were at the pool swimming and everything. So I said, all right, because usually during camp, you come from pool or whatever you're doing, you go straight to dinner. And so I went to Shabbat dinner in my swim trunks and, had on tank top and slippers. And I go and everybody's like suits and dressed. I'm like, what has happened? He's like, oh, it's Shabbat dinner. I'm like, nobody told me that, you're supposed to dress nice and look nice. And he's like, yeah. And so I was just sitting there, the only one with my swim clothes on. It was one of the most awkward moments in my life. And my wife was so mad at me. She still talks about it to this day. Because, women, last thing they want to do is be embarrassed. And they, obviously I got the blame for it. She's like, you should have known. So I got the blame for it. But it was a great experience for me, though.
So, Rabbi, I just want you to know that if I'm going to have a technical problem, it's very good to have the host of a podcast there to take over.
We got this covered. We're good. We're good.
Oh no, it's just the technical Zoom age, and everyone understands. So, Mike, the question that I was about to ask you before I froze out was, you're very open about your depression there and about that very difficult period. And as I understand it, was as a result of your father dying very sadly and unfortunately just before you started your career with the New York Knicks. And I read somewhere that you would actually walk down Times Square and see your face blown up on posters in Times Square. We've all seen those posters. They're magnificent. And it wouldn't affect you. It wouldn't even impact you or make you feel good. Am I right?
Yeah, you're correct. When I was, during that time when I was playing in the league, it was a blur. Like, you know, I was so depressed in such a dark place, and I was living two lives. I was living a life where in public, I got to be this happy person that's in the NBA and all that life is amazing. But behind closed doors, I was a wreck. Behind closed doors, I mean, my wife saw it. I mean, even my friends and my family, I had to hide it from them. So it was one of those things where I had to play two people, and then, you know, see myself on a billboard. Most people like, oh my God, I was excited. For me, I was so depressed at the time. I was like, I can care less. You know, I just want to be. I just wanted peace.
And what struck me most about that video was your declaration that you were happier in your career at the time coaching the Yeshiva University, or as an assistant coach, Yeshiva University basketball team, than you were as an NBA player, and that people couldn't come to grasp with that, but you were quite sure about that. Can you speak to why you felt much happier just coaching these kids, these young guys, rather than being an NBA player?
To be honest with you, I'm just gonna use two words. I found peace in my life, and I found purpose. I was finally just, you know, at peace of mind with just myself, and, you know, with my situation. I accepted the way my career went. I accepted my father's death, and I think my purpose, I found, like, you know, being a basketball player and being on that platform was a stepping stone to be able to help people and change lives. And, like, you know, not compare myself to my father's life, but my father was a person that he loved helping people. He loved giving a shirt off his back. He would do anything for people. He just loved being there for people. So this is a way for me, honestly, to have my purpose, but also keep his legacy alive. So, you know, I'm just at peace with it. I'm happy with the things I'm doing right now.
So, Rabbi, you and Mike are very good friends. So could you please tell us how you happened to meet and spark this friendship?
Yeah, so we talked for 3 seconds while you were offline about that, so no, it's okay. It's all good. It's all good. But I want to just expand on it. So there was an article in the JNS, the Jewish News Service, and I don't know why, but Mike gave out his email for free. So I'm like, if it's there, I'm going to use it. So that's when I reached out to him. He was at Camp Ramah. It was in August. It was like, come out and you'll be a guest star at the camp. And it was much deeper on the court than just like Mike teaching kids how to do layups and rebounds. There was a depth, and that Shabbat morning, we're very blessed at Sinai Temple to get 900 people on a Shabbat morning pre-pandemic. And Mike stood up. It was actually Mike's, but it was your first time in a synagogue, even though he had been to Israel. And I always joke about it. We had falafel for that Friday night dinner, and he said it was his first falafel, even though he also had been to Israel. But there's a beautiful, you can look it up on YouTube, of Mike speaking at Sinai Temple on that Shabbat morning about what Israel and also what the Jewish community has meant to him. And then over the years, actually, Mike came out for the Yeshiva Girls Tournament, I believe, a couple of years ago. We have a club team that we started at the camp, and Mike came and spoke with them as well. So now it's more of an ongoing relationship. Hopefully our camp will be up again in August, and we'll get him out here again. And it's a wonderful thing. Our kids love him. We love him. And what he's doing, as much as what the Jewish community, I would say, has done to support you, Mike, what you have done for us, inspiring us in the sports world, is really, really as important as well.
So Mike, when the rabbi introduced you at the temple, and I actually saw the recording of your talk and the rabbi's introduction, he mentioned that he'd read an article, I think in one of the Jewish newspapers, describing your trip to Israel, and that fortunately there was an email at the bottom, and so he contacted you on that email, and that's how it started. So hopefully you didn't answer this too while I was out, but can you tell us about your trip to Israel, how that came to be, and what your impressions were of the country?
The trip to Israel was amazing. Samir Goodman, obviously pretty much my best friend, like one of my brothers. He invited me out there to do his basketball camp, and I'm be honest with myself, my wife was nervous. So I didn't want you to go, and because she has a sibling, a cousin that works for the State Department. So you need to contact her and make sure everything's okay, because it's dangerous out there, this, that, and the other. So I went out there, took the trailer, like, look, I'm going, and she kind of went off the stuff you see on the news, like it's this bad place, so-called. And I went out there. It was one of the most amazing places I've ever been in my life. Just seeing kids outside at 10, 11 o'clock at night at the park. I'm like, I would never let my kids do that. Watching kids walk to the store by themselves. It was just an amazing place to be. The food was amazing. Being able to go to visit the Western Wall and pray and have a spiritual connection there. We went up north and just seeing so much, seeing Bethlehem, just seeing things that you just read about, and just actually being there in person. It was like an out of body experience. And honestly, after 10 days, I wish it was longer, So I can't wait to get back there. But it was one of the most humbling learning experiences I ever had in my life.
How big is basketball in Israel, Mike? Is it huge?
This I think it's pretty big. Obviously, I want to say their professional league is probably right under like Spain. It's probably like number 2 best leagues there are in the world. I'm obviously not the NBA, but as far as those European and leagues, they're like the second best. So the basketball league is big. And one thing I did notice too, when we were playing against, I noticed a lot of the kids, they were kind of advanced. They knew the game. They teach them young how to play the right way. So it was amazing to watch that.
I want to just take it one step level, Steve, one step to the next level, because when I found out that Mike went to Israel, then I started putting the pieces together. And Sinai Temple is very active in APAC and the U.S.-Israel relationship. We send the largest congregational delegation to the policy conference every year, over 300 congregants. And when I knew that Mike had been to Israel, that's number one. Then he came to Sinai Temple. We became friends. And then I said, Mike, I'm going to throw out a crazy idea. Why don't you join the APAC policy delegation of Sinai Temple? We'll get your train ticket from New York to DC. I'll fly in from LA, and you'll meet, like you'll see Israel in a little different light of how US sees Israel. And he came, but was an amazing story. Maybe Mike, you can share, is the Yeshiva University was in the NCAA tournament at the time. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to bother you. And then Mike, maybe take away that story and share what happened.
So when Erez told me to come to, he said, hey, he invited me to go to APAC. And I kind of knew a little bit about it, but I wasn't really aware of what it was. So I kind of talked to Coach Elliot Steinmetz about it. He was like, I said, look, APAC or the game. He was like, dude, you better go to this game. So I was like, you better go to APAC. That's a no-brainer. He said, look, we're going to get this win for you. We got this. And so just going to APAC, and it's funny because like as soon as everybody saw me, he was like, why aren't you at the game? What's going on? Like everybody was like, because she was during the, obviously we still have a magical run, but at the time our magical run had just started. So people like, they kind of knew who we, what was going on. They like, why are you here and not at your game? You're playing, because we actually put the championship game. It was the conference championship game that I had to skip to go to APAC, but obviously another thing that was, that meant a lot to me. I was thankful for the invitation, and I also learned so much. I think Erez will probably never tell you the truth, but I probably asked him so many questions there. Because obviously I want to learn. I want to learn so much about the culture, why this, why that. So I probably asked so many questions. I just want to be educated. So it was a lot of fun, and I actually got a chance to go to a rabbi's dinner, which I was so nervous about, but going there was a lot of fun. So it was amazing opportunity for me.
All right. Before I turn to you, Rabbi, I just want to remind everyone, there's a chat box. If you have a question for Mike or the rabbi, please send it. I'll be happy to ask it. So Rabbi, let's turn to your podcast. And, as I indicated, I watched them and they're very interesting. And as you've indicated, it isn't just Jewish sports personalities or broadcasters. You interview broad sections of the community. How do you choose your guests?
Yeah. So it's all relational based, actually. Like I said, I grew up in a sports world in Syracuse. My dad's on here. So Rabbi Charles Sherman, I have to give the shout out because he instilled that love of sports in what I do. And when I started the basketball camp, the first thing I did was look up Syracuse University alumni basketball Los Angeles. And I said, hey, I got a camp. Will you come over? And one person led to another. So thankfully, Judaism is a relational community, and one person knows another. So, I actually sort of met Tamir through Mike. I met Mike through Tamir. Andy Katz, who was on the show, the rabbi that I work with here in our Sinai Akiba Academy Day School, they were fraternity brothers. Dan Schulman's part of the Toronto community. I had somebody that knew him. Seth Greenberg, also on ESPN. I knew his cousin from my synagogue that I started out in Los Angeles. And then Coach Boeheim, the Hall of Fame legendary college coach, he was on last week. My father and him knew each other for many, many years growing up in Syracuse. And as you build, if you wish, I don't want to say your clientele, and when I think the guests understand that I'm not going to be the typical journalist that asks, who you're recruiting and what's your team going to look like. I'm going to ask a deeper question that they usually haven't been asked. They've been fascinating conversations that people are really giving of their time, but more than giving of their time, they're actually giving of their story, and they understand. And now we are beginning to understand that sports is part of their life, but it both adds to a deeper message in society, and what they do outside, they bring to the court as well. So it's so far been all relational based.
All right. So you mentioned Dan Sherman. He's known, I'm sure, to the vast majority of our listeners. He's the Blue Jay announcer.
Yes.
And also a national announcer. He's so good at his job. And one of the things I learned from your interview with Dan Sherman is that he was actually on the Maccabiah basketball team. He went to Israel, but unfortunately broke his foot and never got to play. So that was a little anecdote that I learned. So we're going to play a portion of that interview, very interesting part of it. Then I'm going to ask you some questions about it.
Great.
Burst into a chant of USA as everybody found out. Everybody, with the exception of the players initially, actually knew what was going on. And as you guys said, start with you, Bobby. I mean, because of the magnitude of the moment and being in this kind of an environment with 45,000 people, it's you're going to remember you were here forever.
I'll remember I was here, and I remember that I was managing the New York Mets in 9/11, and I had the honor of managing a team that took the field on September 21st on the first baseball game in New York after those horrific attacks. That was when the healing began for many people, and we began to get back to a recovering state.
So that's a moment where I say it's beyond the game. Take us back to that moment when you realize it's not just a baseball game, but it's an American moment. It's a world moment.
Right. So I've actually never seen that clip. That's from our post-game report, I think, that we did for SportsCenter on ESPN. So if people are watching it, it's not 100% clear what that was. That was the night that Osama bin Laden was killed, and it happened on a Sunday evening. Bobby and Orl and I were doing the Mets at the Phillies Sunday Night Baseball. So when you're doing Sunday Night Baseball, I think it was May or June, I think, you're the only real live event, sporting event going on at that time. And what happened was, like in the seventh inning or something, Bobby nudged me with his elbow and just showed me his phone. And he had gotten a text from somebody. And I don't remember who the text was from. I'm not sure I ever even noticed who the text was from. Doesn't matter. But the text said, all it said was, "We got bin Laden."
Wow.
Well, I looked at him like the game's going on. I looked at him, he looked at me, and I call another pitch. And then I go on talkback, which means I can talk to the producer and the director in the truck without it coming out over the air. And I said, "Do you have anything on bin Laden?" And they said, "Yes, don't say anything yet. We're corroborating the details." And I said, "Okay." Called another pitch or two. And now I'm communicating with the truck. What do you know? What should I say? Ground ball to second, on to first, 2 down. That bouncing back and forth. And eventually they got enough corroboration that they felt comfortable telling me, "Okay, you can go with it." And I played it incredibly cautiously. I just gave the facts as we knew them. As time went on, say into the next half inning, it was 2011, I believe, so people have phones and they're starting to find out on their phones. And within a few minutes, this incredible chant of USA, USA breaks out of the ballpark. And what I've always likened it to was like a Lake Placid hockey game or something like that. That's the fervor with which people were chanting. And so that became a story. And that dominated our conversation. And again, sitting next to me was Bobby Valentine, who was the manager of the Mets at the time of 9/11 and was very visible front and center after the fact. So Bobby and Orl and I, we talked about it a lot. The game, oddly enough, wound up going like 13 innings. We were on the air, I bet you, for 2 hours after the story broke. And it was a very odd back and forth between a baseball game and the biggest event going on in the world at that moment. And the fact that the Mets were there, a New York team, made it a little bit bigger. And you had some random people in the ballpark who just happened to be wearing a USA jacket or a shirt or something like that. And it was, as you heard me say to Bobby in that post-game hit, it's something you'll never forget.
And how does that play out in terms of bringing it to the country? And actually during the Jewish community, I'm reminded that it was Yom HaShoah, it was Holocaust Remembrance that day. In that moment, I was at a Holocaust Remembrance when the rabbi stood up and he said, "I have interesting news to tell you at this moment." That is obviously not something that you prepare for. Are there any other moments of history that have interacted or that have mixed with a sporting event?
Certainly nothing to that degree. I mean, there have been some in the last year or two, again, where politics and sports have become intertwined. Back in the summertime, I guess there was a night I was going to do a Blue Jay game. I can't remember who they were playing, but the Blue Jays and the other team decided an hour before the game not to play as a protest in support of equality. This was when it was going on with the NBA teams in the bubble, and some of the baseball teams did the same thing. Things like that. 99.8% of the time, you don't have that. Yeah. You're there to do a sporting event. And it's interesting because no matter what the world event is, there are people who feel, and they're more than entitled to feel this, hey, this is my distraction. I just want to watch a game. There's enough bad news in the world. I turned you on to watch a game. and I've got to be cognizant of that too. Though, they're not necessarily wrong. That's how they feel, and they're entitled to their feelings. So it's always a bit of a balance between sports and everything else that's going on in the world.
Actually, there are two events that I vividly recall as a childhood being in the Carrier Dome for. One was the Pan Am 103 bombing, which took the lives of many Syracuse University students that day. And also the beginning of the Gulf War. Syracuse was playing UConn, and Nadav Hennefeld was on the court. And to announce that we were going to war was, again, one of those moments that you never forget where you were.
So when the Gulf War started, it was 1990. And I was in my first year in this industry, and I was working in a city called Barrie, Ontario, about 50 miles north of Toronto. And I worked at the radio station during the day, and I was the play-by-play announcer for the junior hockey team on like the cable access channel at night. And I don't know how I found this out. This is pre-internet and pre-cell phone. I don't know how I found out, but I was doing the hockey game with my coworker and my buddy and my roommate, Joe Cummings. And maybe at first intermission, I was worried about what was going on and would Israel be brought into it. And maybe I went to a payphone at the arena and called my parents. I don't remember, but they said to me, Israel is under attack. And I went back to the booth, and before the second period started, I said to the producer, I said, guys, I hate to do this to you. I said, but I got to go watch CNN. I can't do the game anymore. Now, had I been working on ESPN or Sportsnet, I don't think I would have done that. I was a 23-year-old kid. We were on a cable access channel. If we had 100 viewers, maybe, I don't know. So coincidentally, Joe and our apartment was like 3 blocks from the arena. So Joe said, okay, you got to do what you got to do. So Joe and he didn't stay. He came with me. We went back to our apartment and turned on CNN, and we're watching what was developing. And then about 45 minutes later, I said to him, what do you think they're doing for the hockey game? And we turned over to the cable access channel, and on the screen it said it was the Barrie Colts. Tonight's Colts telecast has been interrupted due to events in the Persian Gulf. And I can just imagine the average person in Barrie, not Jewish, doesn't know anything about me or anything, turning on, wanting to watch the hockey game and turning it on saying, what in the world is going on? But that's the only time I've done that. But I don't think I would ever do that again. And I haven't thought of that in years and years and years until you brought it up. So you mentioned about the war. But that was, I was only 23 then, but that was a tough night.
Yeah. So I have to tell you, Rabbi, that was both interesting, illuminating, and quite funny at the end, because I could just imagine that caption coming up about a hockey game. And you know what hockey is here.
Yeah, and also he 5 days later, Dan Schulman after that interview, he broadcasted the Duke University of North Carolina game on ESPN, which is basically the biggest college basketball game of the year. And here he is with Jay Bilas, basically the top broadcasters. And I'm thinking to myself, 3 days later, he was talking about where he was during the Gulf War, right? He's not mentioning that on the air purposefully, right? But behind who he is as a human being, like his deep connections to the land of Israel, to the Jewish people, and a strong sense of faith.
Yeah. And Mike, we have a question in the chat box. So that's a good segue from the rabbi. What is it about Judaism that's attractive to you, that you find is worthy of your attention?
Wow, that's a loaded, it's a deep question. But I think for me, I've learned so much about I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this. I grew up in the Catholic Church. And now I'm going to like a non-denominational church where I just believe in God and believe in living right. And I learned so much through Judaism, especially, with the Shabbat, and, just as deep as when, with husbands and wives, and why the wives, cover their hair, the respect level, why men won't shake women's hands. Well, not won't, but, kind of out of respect, won't shake. It's just so much details. And I'm like, wow, this is why this happens. So certain things that, I'm not saying they mix, but I understand why certain things, like even something as small as growing up, when I would go to church, they would say drinking wine is frowned upon. Where I noticed in Judaism, it's accepted. So it's just so many different things that I've learned, just to respect level, how people, just intertwine. And I love it. I love it. I respect it. I've taken some of the stuff in Judaism and integrated in my own life. Even like on Saturday nights, I don't do it fully, but some Friday nights through Saturdays, I kind of just shut down. I do. I kind of just take a decompress, because I've been in people's homes before when I had to do it. I was like, wow, this is definitely decompressing. It makes me, enjoy my family time. So I've learned so much about Judaism, and I don't want to get into so much details about it, because some of the things I want to, gross people out, some of the stuff I've learned, but just, it's amazing to watch.
All right. So Rabbi, I want to turn to something Dan Sherman talked about in that interview that's very controversial and very important. And that's about the intersection of sports and politics. And it's a continuing discussion, and it's obviously risen to an more important platform after the tragedy of George Floyd's death. And you heard what Dan Sherman said, and I'm of course summarizing it, but his point was that there are a lot of people, a large segment of the people who watch sports, who just want sports. It's their diversion, their distraction from the ordinary problems of their life, and they don't want any political discussion. And then I saw your interview with Andy Katz, and Andy took a very different position. Andy was very pro-athlete in terms of athletes taking very proactive positions. He specifically mentioned LeBron James. He talked about his antipathy towards playing the anthem, the connection of the military artificially brought into it with their criticisms of Colin Kaepernick, who he defended vigorously. So you have this contrast, the Dan Sherman view and the Andy Katz view. And I really want to generate a discussion about this and get both of you. So first of all, Rabbi, let me turn to you. What's your view about this? Do you think athletes should just stay athletes, or that there is room for political discourse in a sports arena?
Yeah, so I'll compare it to the synagogue, actually, right? Because that's what we're asked as rabbis. We're not asked who do you vote for, but for instance, there are some synagogues around, I'm speaking about the United States. I don't know enough about Canada and politics and religion, but in the United States, there are synagogues where you go into and you will get a political agenda, whether the right or the left, but you know that they will find a political agenda within the Parsha, within the Torah, within their tradition. What I love about Sinai Temple and Rabbi David Wolpe, who I work with, he once said brilliantly, you don't come to the synagogue to talk about Pence and Pelosi, you come to talk about Moshe and Yehoshua, and Moses and Joshua. I thought that was really brilliant, because it doesn't mean that your tradition can't inform your political opinions, but it means that you will be asked the questions. What I love about Judaism personally is that you're able to ask questions, more questions than answers. So on the sports end, I think if you compare it the same way, right? Like, you can never disconnect everything. So, the fact that Jersey said equality this year, it might mean something different for somebody else. I was actually speaking to an NBA player last week who is European, and he was explaining to me those conversations that are happening in the NBA right now. And it's the balance between, for instance, a fan's political opinion as opposed to a player's political opinion. What I'm learning in the sports world as I'm interviewing all these people is that, look, sports is the biggest equalizer. Like, there's really no reason why Mike Sweetney and Rabbi Erez should be friends, right? We grew up in different cultures, in different places, and we're literally combined by this idea of sports. I interviewed today, which is going to play next week, my 7th grade history teacher, who was a captain on the 1987 Sugar Bowl team for Syracuse University, who's now a professor of education. He said there's 3 words that he taught me in 7th grade: culture, power, and economy. He doesn't mean economy of money, he means economy of relationships. So I believe that if sports can bring people together, then we can do something greater for society. I don't think it has to be explicitly political, but I also don't think it has to be we're just here to escape for 2 hours. We can make a difference. Many coaches that I've interviewed the last couple of weeks, Coach Jim Boeheim, Coach Phil Martelli, they're so active in Coaches versus Cancer. They raise millions and millions for Coaches versus Cancer. So I would ask, what is the issue of the day, and how can athletes be a voice for positive? And again, it's complicated, just like things are within our own tradition in Judaism. But I do believe that athletes and sports can be some type of voice for transformation.
What about you, Mike? What's your view on the intersection between sports and politics?
Oh, you got to unmute.
Thank you. I think so. So for me, I look at it in different views. Sports, like there's so many times that I think about when I was playing basketball, how many people probably had different religious views than me and political views than me. But in the day, we all work together for one common goal, to be better and win. So I feel like, why can't we have that same approach in life? Obviously, like as Erez said, we had different, religions and backgrounds and stuff. I don't talk politics with him, nothing like that. So I think a lot of times it's like all about how can we just work together to be better humans. And a lot of times, some of these, these statements that people are making, people say, "Oh, it's so political, it's so political." When you think about it, sometimes it's mainly about, hey, let's treat people fairly. Let's do things the right way. Let's just be better human beings. So a lot of times people who don't want to hear it, they make it a whole political and it's politics. I'm not going to sit here and talk politics a lot because I'm uneducated on a lot of stuff when it comes to politics. But when I talk about being a better human being and trying to treat people right, whether it's, it's going against anti-Semitism and, treating African Americans well, don't, stop, abusing Asians because you think that they brought the virus. So many different things that it's about just being a better human, and people make it political because they don't want to address the situation. So it's all about being a better human and working together. So I don't care what color you are, what you believe in politically, and all that stuff. It's all about, if you can treat me fair and you can respect me, and I respect and love anybody. I don't care what you believe in, as long as we have respect for each other. So that's my kind of take.
Mike, I just want you to know something. You're a big hit with our community, but because I have more questions that I'm receiving that I'm going to be able to ask you. So I just want you to know they love you.
You have a return appearance.
They love you because you just want to. Here's an example, Marla. I'm reading this, okay, Mike. Mike, will you come to speak from the Bima? That's part of the synagogue at the front at Beth Shalom sometime after COVID. I'd love to meet you in person. Okay, so there you go.
Wow.
So here's a question.
Thank you. But
one's a very specific question. One's a more general question. The specific question is: do you think Yeshiva University is going to do well next year in college basketball? And the second question is there anti-Semitism in the NBA among players and management?
Yeshiva University, I'm hoping we do well. Hopefully have all our players coming back. Obviously they get their year back because of COVID, so I'm hoping that we get everybody back. But definitely, guys are against anti-Semitism when it comes to NBA, and obviously with the Myers-Leonard situation that happened, that was kind of shocking. I don't think, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's happening a lot in NBA. But, behind closed doors, obviously, I don't know if he knew he was being recorded or what he was doing. Who knows what guys feel? It's definitely an ugly thing, to me personally. And it's like, how can you, especially because a lot of people, they speak on it and they don't even know what they're saying and not even educated about it. I mean, so many times I see Julian Edelman had to come out and, address certain guys. I know Deshaun Jackson and some other guys that people have said things and people had to educate them on what's going on. So sometimes people say hateful or mean things and don't even know what they're saying. So that's the thing that kind of amazes me too, in a sense, like you don't even really understand this, the meaning of it, why you're saying it, why you hate this. So I'm hoping that it's not, and obviously I'm not playing anymore, so I don't know. All I know is what you guys know about the Myers-Leonard situation, and for me it's an ugly thing. And me and Erez and obviously Coach Steinmetz and YU, we always had this conversation about it, like how can we stop this? How can we change this? Because all humans deserve to be treated fairly.
Rabbi was struck dead. Sherman indicated that 99.8% of his experience isn't impacted by anti-Semitism. Of course, he's a broadcaster, but that's his culture, that's his world. And of course, there are a number of Jewish owners, including the city of Toronto, where Larry Tenenbaum is one of the owners of the Toronto Raptors. I know Miami has a Jewish owner. So what's your view of college sports, and anti-Semitism. Do you see that as a predominant problem?
Yeah, if you remember last June, Steven Jackson, former NBA player, he said, I don't remember exactly, but he invoked Hitler and different things like that. And 2 days later, somebody knew him and asked Rabbi Wolpe to go on Instagram live conversation. And he did it. And I asked him why he did it. And he said, because that can make a difference. And I remember that conversation, Rabbi Wolpe asked him, right? He asked the person who said the anti-Semitic remark, what can we as a Jewish community do for the Black community? It was a very powerful moment. It wasn't attacking the person who said the statement, but whether it was instead saying, what can we do for you to help? And Mike nailed it with education. And then Steven Jackson asked right back, Rabbi, what can I do for you, for your community? And for me, it's, again, the thing that I started with a little while ago was my basketball camp. It's not just Jewish kids playing on this basketball camp right now. Our head coach is a Black man from the inner city of LA who's been embraced by the Jewish community. And every week we give out about $5,000 to $7,000 of scholarships to those young kids in the inner city that, to be honest, from the Jewish community, it's the first time that they're meeting a Black kid. It's the first time that they're playing basketball with him. At the end of the week, I remember this young kid at the end of the week walked out of the door like normally, said to one of our kids, hey, Shabbat Shalom. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I didn't plan for that, right? But those moments happen because there is a court involved. So yeah, I'll take wearing shorts and a t-shirt any day if these are the moments that we can build as a Jewish community. So is there, I mean, I'm not an NBA player, not an NBA coach, I'm just a fan, right? But I do believe that we have a voice in the religious community of bringing people together in the way that Mike said. I think the Mike Tamir relationship is amazing. More needs to be done like that. I think Yeshiva University has a huge place in this whole relationship right now as they get more media attention as well.
All right, so I think we have time for one question for both of you. The first question is from Paula, and it's for you. And Mike, the questions aren't easy in this program. I hope you didn't think they were going to be easy. Here's the question. Why do you think there are not more Jewish basketball players? They are in hockey and baseball, but not so much in pro basketball. Also, this is an awesome evening. So I don't know if you can speak to that, but
no, I mean it's a great question. I think now it's starting to change. I think this past year in the NBA draft, it was like 2 or 3 guys. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. I know for a fact 2 guys got drafted in '83, got drafted to the NBA. So slowly but surely, it's starting to happen and it's coming. The Jewish basketballs, the Jewish Basketball Association is starting to get a lot more respect now. So it's just coming. It takes time. I know like the NBA is becoming more international. There are a lot more international players, so that means more Jewish kids and Asian, whatever it may be, are starting to get those chances now. But I definitely think it's starting to change. And obviously, with us, YU, I look at the stuff that we're doing. We got 2 guys on our team that could have been higher major Division I players, but they decided to come play at us at Division III, which is amazing. And that's going to help us. And I think the spotlight is happening. So we have a guy, Ryan Terrell, who's an NBA prospect. So it's coming. It's starting to happen now. So I'm excited about seeing this change because just last year you had 3 guys, whereas before that, I think Amari Caspi was the only person within ever. I don't know, maybe I could be wrong, but he was the only person. But so now, you go from 1 person to 3 people in 1 year. So it's starting to happen.
And you haven't had, in the last 30 years, you haven't had people like Mike working at camps like Ramah and things like that, right? Like if you're going to Jewish camp, you weren't playing basketball over the summer. And now, like I said before, you can do both. And that's really a mission of mine. So Mike's helped in that way, and he's connected other players to other Jewish camps as well.
All right. And Mike, the first round draft pick of the Washington Wizards this year played for Maccabi Tel Aviv, just to point out that you're absolutely correct. So Rabbi, here's a question from Ruby. And this is a difficult question, so you're going to have to think about it. Who is the most memorable guest you had on your podcast and why?
Yeah, well, thankfully it's only been 18 weeks, so I have not so long of a memory. I'm going to say 2 just because they're 2 different answers. One was last week, which is Coach Jim Boeheim. He was like basically my childhood hero. And for several reasons also, by the way, not just on the court, but I'm one of 5 kids and I had a brother that passed away in 2017. He was a quadriplegic. And sports was a huge inspiration, and just a part of our lives. And what Coach Boeheim, the cranky man that you see on the sidelines, is not the man that you see off the sidelines. And the amount of work that he did with the special needs community at any point in our life was just the amount of gratitude. So to sit down with him for 35 minutes and for him to give me his time was really a dream of mine. So that was number one. In terms of the faith aspect, that's a tough one. I'll go for the Toronto thing right now. I think Dan Schulman's just been he's an amazing model. His deep connection, obviously, to your community. I know at Beth Tikva, where my friend's a Rabbi Jared Grover, and his depth of knowledge about worldly affairs, Jewish affairs. I think he can be a real interesting catalyst in this changing world of sports and faith.
Right. And just to point out, you've had a number of women who you've interviewed too.
And also there's women and also people who have played in Israel that are not Jewish as well. So you can check out Chelsea Hopkins, not very known, but an amazing, amazing person. Talia Caldwell played for Cal, whose great grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. I mean, these stories that when they come out are just are worth listening to and worth telling.
So who's your guest? Who's the guest you want to get and you really have on your podcast?
I mean, I'm a huge basketball person, so I'm trying to go back and forth, but Coach K would be amazing. I think he's a model American citizen. He's worked for the USA Olympic team. Thankfully, he's friends with some of the people that I've spoken with, so I don't want to get too many, but also the local flavor. Like this week, I'm having my Little League coach, Dave Cohen, who is also the broadcaster for the New York Yankees in 1995, who also is a High Holiday Chazan, leads the services. So each person is leading to a next person. And what I also have found out, and this is what my dad taught me, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean that in the beautiful way. People want to share their stories. That is who we are as a people. We're a people who share our stories. We're the people of the book. So we need to share. We need to listen. We need to hear. So I'm glad that I, at least for a few moments tonight, could share part of my story and most importantly, my friendship with Mike.
So Mike, your voice carries more on this question than virtually anyone I can talk to. And I want to know your predictions for the NBA race. Who do you think we should watch and who do you think? And don't pick Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, please, because it still hurts that he left us after we won the championship. No, you pick whoever you want. Who do you think is the team that will take it this year?
Wow, it's so tough. It's hard not to say Brooklyn. I mean, you think if they stay healthy, you have a really good shot. And obviously in the West, you just don't know. Obviously the Lakers are banged up, so I don't know how much they're looking, whatever. And, Phoenix, you don't know because they never had the experience. So I don't want to say it, but you got to look at the Clippers. But for me, it's just like, if everybody stay healthy, like Brooklyn is probably just going to run with it. That's just my opinion.
So Mark notes, and I appreciate your comment, Mark notes, Nadav Hennenfeld also played in the NBA. So thank you for that. Yep. And so before I say goodbye to you, I just wanted to do a little promo for a program for tomorrow evening. And that is a book launch, not just my book launch, but there's going to be a program for Randy Skirka. She's doing a program at Beth Sholem, and the poster is up. And you'll notice the same last name as me. And you don't have to read the book, and Randy's great. And I encourage you, if you have, and this is for Thursday, May 6th at 7:30. And please consider registering. I was asked to do a bit of teaser for my book launch, so I'm going to comply with the request. It's going to be fun and interesting. I think, this has just been such a difficult time for everyone. I'm going to introduce you to my book, which has a lot of humor, but I'm really going to talk about the writing process, how I actually wrote the book, how I got the ideas for it, the title, the cover, which is interesting. So I think it'll be a fun evening if you come out tomorrow. And thank you for asking for that. So, gentlemen, what a pleasure, really. Just what a delight to have you both here, and an honor. Mike and Rabbi Sherman, you come from different parts of the United States, but it is one community. And thank you for sharing your insight. Mike, Rabbi, thank you everyone for listening in. I look forward to our next program. Do you want to say anything, either you before I say goodnight, Rabbi and Mike?
I just want to thank you. Go ahead. You first. You first.
No, I just want to say thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. Just to interact with you guys, and obviously I love chatting with you, Erez. So just thank you for the opportunity, and look forward to hopefully coming to Canada soon.
Okay, and Rabbi, last word.
And it's just thank you everybody, and look forward to you joining us on Rabbi on the Sidelines. It's every Thursday, just about live on Facebook and YouTube. You can Facebook friend either me or Sinai Temple, and we're looking forward to continue those stories in the sports and the faith. I call it beyond the ball because it goes much deeper than just what we see on the court. So I want to thank Steve also, and also Jen, who reached out initially to put this together.
Yes.
And hello to Mark Veronica from Miami. Hello to our congregants from Los Angeles. We look forward to our next program with Sinai Temple. And good night, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.